Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. University messed up a student org reimbursement by a decimal place, and essentially told me to take it or leave it. The second story. Lady loses $150-ish because she wouldn't let me explain her cost. The third story. Fed up with a difficult insurance company, a hospital employee sends over 150 pages of clinical notes in response to their request for missing information. The first story is, my university told me to steal $9,000 from them, so I did. This story is back from when I was attending university several years ago pre-pandemic. I was the president of school club. We had good attendance but limited interest in leadership positions. The university lists all university org officers on their website for anyone with internet access to see. But anyway, that meant I was the only acting officer of this club, making me the secretary and treasurer also. The other officers were actually previous club presidents who had graduated. You just needed 3 student ID numbers to remain an active club. I had planned a large ice cream social that went great. I rented a ballroom on campus, free for student orgs, had ice cream catering, a live band, and almost 100 students in attendance. It was a great way to begin the school year. Anyway, it all cost something like $1,021.17. Not the actual amount, but something like that. There were 2 methods to pay for this kind of thing: petition in advance for university funds, or pay it yourself and submit a reimbursement after the fact. In the past, the school had taken 6 months to pay a vendor I used, and it was a stressful experience because I wanted them to be paid. I felt terrible having to just keep saying the university is working on it, and going to the student org finance office twice a week to ask them about it for months. So I figured I'd take the hit and wait for the funds myself. I could sweat it out on student loans and get the band and caterer paid in a timely fashion. There's a bunch of compliance paperwork to fill out. You have to submit itemized receipts, etc., etc. Long story short, it's a process. But I got it all filed and I waited. About 4 months later, I got an email prompting me of an activity in the student org finance portal to approve a direct deposit to my account. You have to confirm the amount. I wish I'd been drinking water because I would have spat it out dramatically, but the amount was for $10,211.70. They had clearly just misplaced the decimal point. I could accept or comment on it, so I wrote that the amount should have been $1,021.17. In an hour, I got a response back, along the lines of, yes, the amount is $10,211.70. So I responded, no, it should be $1,021.17. And the response was that she couldn't find an issue. Now look, I'm terribly dyslexic, as in I actually am. I sometimes have to clarify this because it seems to be a quirky thing people without a learning disability say to play off a mistake. So I was genuinely thinking maybe I'm misreading it and causing her to be confused. Maybe for who knows why, the computer put 3 numbers after the decimal. So I was reading 1021.170 and thinking I saw 10,211.70 or something like that. I had a friend look at it and she confirmed I was in fact reading it correctly. But hey, maybe the lady in the finance office was also dyslexic, or overworked, or could care less to actually look. Whatever the case, I can explain myself better in person, so I walked down to the office. I was a regular at this point. There was hardly ever a line because nearly everything is done online. So I go up to the desk and say there's been a mistake on a reimbursement request for a club event. I'm told to have a seat and she'll chat with me in a moment. So I waited for about half an hour while she sat on her phone at the desk. Then she calls me up. I explain I was over-reimbursed and she says, look, as I've told you, there's nothing wrong. So I said, but it's off by a decimal place. She just kinda sighed and said she could deny the reimbursement or I could accept it and leave. She seemed to be getting very upset with me, probably because I was constantly asking her the previous year about the payment for that vendor. I said I would accept it and left. When you accept, you can make a comment, so I basically typed in the comment box that I tried to remedy the situation, and was told there was no issue repeatedly, over chat and in person, and then was threatened to not be reimbursed at all. I took screenshots of all the messages in case I had to defend myself. After a few business days, the money was direct deposited into my bank account the university has on file for tuition and student loans. I let it sit there for a couple years while I was a student, expecting them to find the error and demand the money back. When I was getting close to graduating and that never happened, I gave the money to a member in my club whose parents stopped paying his tuition because he started testosterone. They pulled funds past the deadline for federal student loans and obviously wouldn't co-sign for private loans. Interestingly enough, For any events over 15K, you had to file invoices in advance and have it pre-approved. Anything under that, they recommend you do this, but you can be reimbursed with proper receipts and paperwork. I think that's why it didn't raise any alarms in the computer system. At least that's all I can reason. It kinda haunts me to this day that I might randomly owe 9K at some point. And I just don't understand what I was saying wrong that she couldn't understand me. And I worry I should have gone to her supervisor. But I was 19, so I just did as I was told. This student decided to take matters into their own hands and steal $9,000 from their university. But the best part is that they were told to do it. But really, can you imagine the confusion that must have ensued when the student received that $10,211.70 direct deposit? I think they were doing a happy dance until they realized the error. And then when they went to the finance office to correct it, they were met with resistance. Real kicker is that the student just sat on the money for a couple of years waiting for the university to figure out the mistake. And when they didn't, the student gave the money to a club member who needed it for tuition. It's like Robin Hood, but instead of stealing from the rich to give to the poor, it's stealing from the confused and giving to the needy. And I can say that. It's a good thing the student had the presence of mind to take screenshots of all the messages and keep them as evidence. You should always have a backup plan. The next story is, pro tip, don't tell the person trying to save you money to F off. Backstory. About a year ago, I was working seasonal at a gift store. My store sold things from a wide price range, from $10 pens to $750 clocks. Not to mention the main draw of our store was custom engraving, which cost even more. For Christmas, we had a buy one, get one 75% off, which was huge. But the stipulation was you get the discount on the cheapest items. I was one of the people who worked the machines and not a sales or cashier worker. Also, we don't discount engraving costs, so I won't mention them. So the actual story. It was a slow day, so they had me practice on the register if I never needed to do it. In the event, the actual cashier was on break, so I'm ringing up my first customer, slowly since I know F all about the register system. She had bought two fairly expensive gifts, around $200 to $250 without engraving, so she was getting one of them for $50. Now, as anyone who has worked in retail knows, you have to give a spiel about reward systems or some BS. As I started ringing her up, she asked for a $4 gift bag we sell as well. I say, of course, and add it to the register and notice that, since it was now the cheapest item, return the $200 item to full price. I was about to mention this. Me equals me. Customer equals C. Me. Now, miss, I should tell you. C. I'm very busy and your incompetence has already taken way longer than this checkout should have. I don't want to hear about your rewards program. Me taken back a bit, as up to this moment she was pleasant. No, I mean, C. Just check me out already. Me. Okay. I ring her up, tell her the total, $450 without engraving costs at this point, which isn't that uncommon for this place, and she pays going on her way, acting like I had kept her waiting for hours when it had been about 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, she's back in here yelling about how we ripped her off and that we didn't give her 75% off. C. How come I was charged full price? It's the cheaper item. Me. It was until you bought the bag. I was trying to tell you that, but you cut me off. C. Well, I demand a refund. Me. I can't do that, ma'am. We cannot refund engraved items, and since you bought these as part of a buy one get one, you would need to return all items. Then she demands my manager, who tells them pretty much the same thing. We cannot refund engraved items, unless we F them up, since we cannot unengrave it. Update. As many of you suggested, we could have just changed the transaction. Even if the manager on duty, the assistant manager, wanted to, she actually couldn't. That's something only the actual manager could do. Edit. I genuinely did try to inform her that she would be making a huge mistake by buying the bag. I like being helpful, but if you not only refuse my help but also do it in a D-ish way, well, sorry. You done messed up, Aaron. I agree it was a dick move, but you fight fire with fire. She was a dick, I was a dick. In all honesty, she probably could have gotten a refund by going to corporate, but I, nor the assistant manager who was there ATM, could. So we also weren't exactly lying. This customer tried to save a few bucks by buying a cheap gift bag, but little did she know that it would actually cancel out her discount. And when the cashier tried to explain this to her, she told him to F off. But little did she know that her rude behavior would come back to bite her in the butt when she realized she had to return everything to get a refund, which included the custom engraved items that couldn't be unengraved. Oopsie. Don't mess with the person who's trying to save you money, especially when they work in retail. They might just have a few tricks up their sleeve, and if you do decide to be a rude customer, don't be surprised if karma comes knocking on your door. It's like they say, treat others the way you want to be treated, or risk losing out on that sweet buy. The last story is, you want it all? enjoy shutting down for the afternoon. I work in a children's hospital and my job is to send progress notes to insurance companies to convince them to pay for children's cancer treatments, because apparently that's something you need to do. Most all transactions work the same. I fax the insurance company the notes that we call clinicals, and they fax us back something saying, yes, this patient is approved for those days. Please fax notes again in 4 days. There's one local insurance company that we deal with a fair amount that is just the absolute worst. They send fax after fax with incomplete information on it, with no information, with wrong birthdays so that we can't find the patient, etc. They've occasionally sent faxes with no other identifying information than their own file number for the patient. Like we don't use your system, idiots. They send denials for the stupidest things, usually because they didn't receive clinical until I call them and say, we sent it yesterday at 2:52 p.m. I have a confirmation that it went through if you'd like the number. Oh, okay, there it is. The worst though is that one of the main nurses always pluralizes clinicals as clinicals. Ugh. Anyway, we've had a patient of theirs here for literally hundreds of days. They typically send approval or denied days every couple of days, but for this patient we got approved days the first week or so, but nothing since. I call them about once a week and say, hey, did you get the clinicals I sent? Yes? Then can you fax back approved days? They always say it's pretty much approved, or I'll send your request to the case manager, but I never hear anything back. I think the case manager that started this quit, and the case is just in some weird bureaucratic netherworld. More likely every other case manager doesn't want to do it because they'll have to review everything. This patient discharged last week finally, she's healthy, and so I need to know the status of those days so that I can close her out on my list. I call the company and say, this patient that I've been calling about, I really need an actual fax with an actual authorization number so that I can close this and not gamble a multi-million-dollar account on someone saying, yeah, I think she's approved. The woman on the phone still balks and I say I really need it faxed today. That every day of clinical has been sent over the past 9 to 10 months. She started getting frustrated and says she'll call me back. I tell her that's been told to me before and no one has called. She says fine, just refax the clinical for the days you don't have. I've already faxed everything. Well, I don't see it and it would just be easier for you to fax them again. I've already told her how many days were missing, but I was tired of dealing with her and I had time. So I spent the next 45 minutes going through this patient's chart and putting all the clinical for almost the past year into one document that totaled over 150 pages. I faxed it to her. My hospital is pretty nice and modern, so although we deal with faxes every day, we don't have a fax machine so much as a program that collects and treats everything like a PDF. Much easier. Apparently, the smallish insurance company still uses paper faxes because about 20 minutes later, I get a call from someone else there asking me to cancel the fax I sent, because it's been 30 minutes and it's only on page 20 or so. I say that I cannot cancel the fax because I've been requested to send everything. She hangs up. Another call comes from them a minute or so later, but it's my lunchtime so I ignore it and go about my merry way. I get a fax from them later that afternoon that just says, all days approved, case closed. I hope I ruin their whole day, especially since they're terrible and are apparently too stupid to know how to cancel a fax from their side. Dealing with insurance companies can be a headache, but this hospital worker decided to take matters into their own hands. They spent 45 minutes putting together over 150 pages of clinicals just to prove a point to the unresponsive insurance company. And what did they get in return? A phone call asking them to cancel the fax they sent because it was taking too long to print. Karma can be a funny thing, especially when dealing with outdated technology. But hey, at least the patient got the care they needed, and the insurance company got a taste of their own bureaucratic medicine. Subscribe, click the like button if you want to support the channel.